Welcome to the Mighty Baker Business Circle podcast. I am your host, Pete Tidwell, bakery business coach at the Mighty Baker. Join me as I share my knowledge and expertise on essential topics for running a successful bakery business. Each week, I will provide tips and strategies on time management, marketing management, and mindset management. In addition, I will be interviewing other bakery entrepreneurs to provide listeners with valuable insights and inspiration. Don't forget to join the Mighty Baker Business Circle Facebook group for a community of bakery and small food business entrepreneurs to connect and share knowledge. Tune in and let me be your guide on your journey to bakery business success. So come on and let's jump right in the mixing bowl and see what is being mixed up and discussed in this week's episode of the Mighty Baker Business Circle podcast. Let's go.
Okay, okay.
Welcome to the Mighty Baker Business Circle podcast. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I have an amazing guest today. Her name is Mitzi Torgersen, and I am so stoked because her and we connected on Instagram, and she reached out to me and asked me if I could come and be a part of her World Cookie Summit that we'll probably talk a little bit about today. And I'm really, really excited about that. But I want to introduce to you first Mitzi Torgersen, who is a business-loving, sprinkle-obsessing mom of 4 boys from Utah. I got that from her website. I loved that. And she is the founder of the World Cookie Summit, organizer of the Cookiers Group, creator of Baking Magic photography presets, and creator of the Happy Flavor, which is a flavor enhancer for cakes and cookies, which I'm excited to give a try one of these days. And most recently, a competitor on 2022's Food Network's Christmas Cookie Challenge. And as I said, I'm very excited. I'm going to be speaking at her World Cookie Summit on March 23rd, and I'll let her speak about that as we go through this interview. But let's jump right in and chat with Mitzi. And I just want to first welcome to my podcast and welcome to the Mighty Baker family.
Thank you, Pete. And I have to tell you, this is my first official podcast, so thank you for having me.
Yes, I love it. See, this can kind of enter you into this world, and maybe you can start your own podcast sometime, right?
Yeah, maybe I'll leave that to you.
I love it. I love it. Okay, well, we're going to jump right into this. I have a bunch of questions for Mitzi today, and one of my overall goals I mentioned in my last interview podcast is I really want to highlight different bakers in the industry and how they've chosen to enter into the industry and what kind of background, what kind of interest they have. So my first question for Mitzi today is, I'd like you to tell us about your background and how you got started into baking. How did this whole journey begin for you?
Hey, I am going to start with it just laying it on thick because that's how I am. I don't really have a filter. You ask a question, you'll get like 100% truth, right?
Love it.
So, and maybe I like to tell this story because maybe other people can kind of relate in some way or another, even if it's not exactly the same. But I have 4 boys, and my life has revolved around these 4 boys. My oldest now is 13. And when I had number 4, he's actually 4 now. Afterwards, I had quite a hard time. Looking back, I had postpartum anxiety pretty bad. In the middle of it, it was just a survival mode. So I didn't really accept it. And I was like, I'm fine. I can do all the things. But now I look back, I had this crazy anxiety where every time I looked at him, I literally thought as a newborn, he was dead. Not like the, oh, are you breathing? And you kind of put like your hand next to their nose and, you see if they're breathing. It was literally a constant thought of I would put him in the stroller and I'd be like, oh man, that's terrible. He's dead. And then I'd look at him and he's not, obviously. And then I would go to push the stroller and I'd be like, oh, I'm pretty sure my baby's dead. And I'd go look at him again. It was terrible. And not saying like a lot of other people probably have, anxiety or postpartum, but you can relate when sometimes your brain just does things that you aren't choosing. It was just a constant thing in my head. So up late at nights, I would, try to find something to distract myself. And I just started watching those tasty videos that are kind of fast motion. Here's all the things, which led me to cookie decorating videos, which led me to jump all in. I was like 24/7, like, kids, be quiet, I'm watching cookie decorating. Like, it was like, became my obsession, which was a lot more healthy than, you know, the anxiety thoughts I had before. So I kind of replaced that with something that was a little more productive. And since then, it has just been my therapy, my coping mechanism. It's like my go-to. Cookie decorating is like, if I get a little angry, maybe I just need a little more cookie time, you know?
Yeah, I love that so much. I talked about this on a podcast a few weeks ago. That's kind of exactly, but not exactly, very similar to how I got into baking. As I was working in New York City at a brand new job, and I was overwhelmed. I hated my job. I was depressed. I was dealing with all sorts of stuff, and the only way I was able to make it through is by learning how to bake and bake cakes and cookies and just learn how to bake, because it was my only like escape away from the world.
Right. And there are a lot worse outlets that you could turn to. So I am embracing the extra calories, the extra like frump I gained from it. And I'm totally just going with baking as being, it's a good place to go.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And how long ago did this bakery journey start for you then?
So I started, he's 4, so he was just a
Okay.
newborn. So I've been dabbling in it for 4 years. I would say the last 2 years has kind of been when I was serious about it. When I kind of was all in and wanted to take it to more of like a business as opposed to just, this is fun for, you know, neighbors and local clients.
Yeah. So from that, then how did you bridge that gap from doing it more as a hobby, stress relief, kind of that kind of thing, from deciding to turn it into a business? What was that kind of switch? What kind of happened for you?
Right. So I spent a lot of time online researching. If I'm going to do something, like, I want to do it right. I have a little bit of a perfectionism in me, trying to cure that, but we're there. And so I would look up everything, and it would take so much time. I felt like, you know, I'm like, oh, I want to learn how to do that. And then 12 YouTube like tutorials later, I'm like, okay, I feel like I can finally like try it. And I was like, this is not going to work. So I actually started the World Cookie Summit with it, the intent of it being a small get together where I could just get cookie people together, and we could kind of, you know, some of the nice people in the industry could teach other people like myself how to be better at cookies. And so I reached out to some of like the more helpful trendsetters in the cookie world. And I just said, hey, I have this idea. Do you want to do it? Not even knowing it would become what it is now. And the nice people in the world, I did have a few haters that were like, what are you thinking? You cannot do that. But the good cookie lovers, they embraced it with open arms. They were so awesome about it. And so we had this World Cookie Summit, and tons of people came. And when it was over, it had been such a great thing that people were like, okay, when are you going to do it again? Like they didn't want to end. And so then from then I formed the Cookiers, which is kind of just an extension. Like, we have people who come in every month and they guest teach a cookie set. We have business calls. It's really just a very supportive community where people, I mean, we're just really good friends. And so it kind of just evolved naturally, you know, just by wanting to get people, nice people together who would help each other out. It's became kind of the thing that people were looking for. And it's a really awesome, cool support system that especially myself needed. And now a lot of people kind of, you know, have found their spot in that as well.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much, because especially as like a solo like business owner, and also getting into the artist kind of standpoint, it's a very lonely place. And to be able to have some kind of community like this is such a value. So that's so cool that you've created something like that to provide that for other people. Because I don't know if you've felt this, but I've definitely felt this as a solo bakery, like cake artist. Like, I feel very alone sometimes. So to have like a support system like that is huge.
Right. I used to tease my husband that my only boyfriend in the world besides him is my Pico. And so I'd be like, I'm just staying up all night with Pico. Like, we're just hanging out. My Pico projector was like my other love in this world. We're up until 3 a.m. together. Like, we'll talk to each other. It's
Oh,
fun.
that's funny. That's really funny. So my next question I wanted to ask is, so with cookies being such a creative outlet, one of my questions is how do you balance the creative aspect of baking and of cookies with the business side of running, like of those two different sides? Because they're two different distinct sides, and I think it's an area where a lot of like bakery industry and most businesses struggle with a little bit of, how do I remain creative in my passion area, but also grow a business? What kind of things do you do? How do you balance that?
Right. That is such a good question because I struggled really bad with this at the beginning. And I realized that my brain has to compartmentalize things. So if I am having, like this month is the World Cookie Summit. So I'm doing way more business stuff than I am creative stuff. And that's okay with me. And sometimes I just need my own creative like content. And I'm like, I am going to do a very creative piece just for content on Instagram and my website and all the things. And I'm going to focus more on that and less on business. And sometimes I want to do cookies for other people and I want to like do service and give stuff away. And then I'm going to focus a little more on that. And so if I try to do it all at the same time, nothing ever works out well. Everything is kind of halfway done. And so I've accepted in my life that it's okay to spend more time on one thing 1 month and then switch to another. And there's really not any rules. I mean, I have 4 boys, so sometimes that just has to be, I'm spending more time with my boys this month. And so, and I felt guilty maybe at first about juggling all the things, but now I realize it's a much healthier place for me.
Well, and there's a quick little follow-up question for that, because I know there's a lot of people that run home bakery businesses and have children. So do you have like maybe a tip or something that's worked for you to balance that? Because that's a big balance. I work from home. My wife works a part-time job and we have kids that are in school. So luckily I get to drop them off at school, but when they're around at home, it's very hard to get things done. So do you have any tips there for listeners?
Yeah. And to be 100% transparent on this, I struggled until I got a babysitter because my 4-year-old is in preschool. And so I had 2.5 hours and that was it. And that was not enough. I am a better mom when I can work and have my own outlet and also mom. I go insane in my own head if I'm just momming. And so for me, getting a sitter just 2 days a week for me was enough to kind of help me just be more balanced. So that was my first thing. And then my second thing I learned is not all of my kids are interested in baking and cooking and stuff like that. But my 10-year-old actually loves it and adores it. And so he's learned that if I just cook a couple extra cookies for him and he uses the icing when I'm done with it, just in case, because I don't want to run out, then he actually cookies with me. So that's been a really good kind of bonding time for us. Like I said, my other boys aren't even interested in it, but that's been a really good, an easy way to balance and kind of incorporate them, at least one of them.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced as you've been growing your bakery related business, and how have you overcame them?
Yeah. I honestly think I'm gonna turn this back to other cookiers because I'm huge on community. And I think at the beginning, I did have a few people who, kind of doubted what I was doing. I had a few family members that even was like, oh, if you get a real job, let's do this project together. Or people in the community, in the cookiers community, who kind of went, I don't know what you're trying to do here, but like, stop. I had some people that if I would have taken it to heart, it could have, turned my experience to be a little bit negative and ugly. But since I didn't, I feel like it was a challenge to get out of my own head and get out of, who am I, imposter type syndrome. But once I did, it's kind of been the best blessing because I've learned and I've grown so much from that. And I can really relate to people who are just starting because we were all there, right? We all needed help from somewhere. So I'm going to go back to community has been the hardest thing, because you do want to feel involved, but then once you find your people, it honestly becomes the best blessing.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So interesting. I didn't actually know this when you and I first spoke, but I didn't realize that you went on a Food Network competition show, and I have experience on Food Network competition shows, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. So what inspired you to apply for that show, or how did that happen? Did they reach out to you? Did you apply? How did that all happen?
Yeah. So I got a DM that said, "Hey, you want to apply for this?" And I kind of laughed out loud, because I was like, I've only been doing cookies for a couple of years. There's been people who've been doing it for like 10 or 12 or whatever. And so I kind of laughed. And then at that point, I was like, this actually could be a little fun project. I'm kind of a project girl. It might be cool. So I just replied and kind of was just going along with it. And then when it became real, it wasn't until then that I was like, oh, wait, what? Like, what am I going to do? Okay, here we go. Like, this is all in, whatever. I'm here for it.
That's awesome. So from your experience, like, what were some of the challenges that you faced when you went on the show? Was it your first time like being on a TV show? Were there like nerves there? Like, maybe walk us through your overall experience of like, what was that like for you?
Okay, Pete, I am competitive to my core. I am competitive. I played college golf. Like, it is just in me. And so I had been on local like TV stations before in kind of a smaller setting. This was my first like, whoa, like big thing. And when I was there, it was a competition to me. It wasn't TV. It wasn't like I was there to win. And so preparing for the show, I mean, there's not a lot you can do to prepare, but I was just trying to get quicker, like memorize my recipes, do all the things that I could, because you don't really know what to expect once you get there. And so for me going into it, it really wasn't quite as much nerves, because I talk a lot in front of the cookiers. The World Cookie Summit has quite a few people who show up. I'm not like super nervous about that. I feel like, people will like me or they won't. It's fine. I was more nervous because I was like, this is competition, like game on. And so, I was rolling up my sleeves and getting all ready for that.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And how has participating in the show impacted your baking career as well as your personal life? How has that affected things?
Okay. Differently than I thought that it would. And I will say that I think I'm still on the journey to figure out why I was on the show, but I know there was a reason, because I'm not saying go back and watch my episode, because like, I don't want anyone to do that ever. Like, can you just like, I don't even want to say what episode it was, but I was on the first 15 minutes of it, which was great. But it was, I don't want to say it was an epic fail, because when I left and I was on my way home, I felt like that was a big epic fail. But now I look back on it, there was a reason I was not supposed to do good on this competition. Like, maybe it's the lessons that I'm learning, and I still say learning because I'm still learning them. But I honestly say it's God or the universe or whatever you believe in. Like, I believe there was a reason that I was supposed to fail like I did. Just a little, don't go watch the episode. So I'll give you just a short little thing. Nothing in my kitchen works. My mixer, my timer, like all the things. Like, it was so frustrating in the moment. And so I felt like I was just trying to critically think the whole time. Okay, I'm 15 minutes behind everybody else. Should I color my dough to try to save time? Okay, I'm 20 minutes behind everybody else. Like, things just weren't working. And I didn't feel like it was things that were outside of my control. And back then I was super frustrated, but looking back on it, I'm like, there is a reason that I was not supposed to do well. And, the lessons that I learned, maybe it's even just relating to people in life who are going through hard things, because afterwards, when I got home, I had such a competitive mindset. When I didn't do very good, it was depressing, and it put me in this downward spiral of like negative self-talk and, oh, should I even do cookies anymore? What is this? Blah, blah, blah. Like, it was so bad. And And so maybe it's just to share my story so I can relate to other people when they're going through hard times. And, I still think I'm still figuring out why I went on the show, like what my purpose was, or maybe just, the things that I've learned from it, more self-acceptance or better self-talk in my head. Those things I think I'm still learning, but I'm glad at this point that I did it. Right after filming, I wouldn't have said that.
Well, it's interesting. Time usually does that, right? When you come back from things. I had one of my episodes that I was on, or one of the shows I was on, that did not turn out the way that I wanted it to. And it's hard to come back to life after things like that. But the thing, and I think you touched on this as well, is one of the things is you're always learning from that as time goes on. And just the fact that you were brave enough to even say yes and apply and even go on the show, that's farther than most people make. I hope you know that. Like, there's a lot of people that are like, nope, not going to do it.
Right.
But you did it.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that, because I do discount that sometimes, and I need to, embrace that a little more. So thank you.
Yeah. Celebrate that, because I think there's a lot of people. I remember when I applied for my first Cake Wars that I went on, and my first response was, nope, not doing it. Nope. And then I ended up going on it, but I'm glad that I pushed myself to do that, even though, because I think there's a lot of people that are just like, nope, not going to do it. So good job. You're brave. Good work. It's not the easiest thing to jump on a television show with everything out of your control, essentially.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Okay. So my next question is, like, when it comes to recipe development and like ingredient selection, I know one of your projects is that happy flavor enhancement that you have. So I know that you're into some of the flavors and those kind of things. So when you do approach recipe development and ingredient selection, what approach do you take?
Awesome. Perfectionism. I would rather have like 3 amazing signature recipes than like 100 decent ones. Like, I want good recipes, because I eat my own stuff. I like my own cookies, and I want that to be the case with other people too, right? So this kind of started a little bit because I had attended a few cookie cons, and everyone swaps cookies at cookie con. That's just a fun kind of icebreaker thing to do. And I would eat the cookies that people would make, and I wouldn't like the cookies that people are making. They are elaborate and beautiful and amazing, and you can tell they put so much time into it, but I would take a bite and I would be like, not worth the calories, right? So I kind of had taken it upon myself to take my own recipes. I think it took me over 2 years to develop my original sugar cookie recipe to be one where I was like, this is bomb. It took me 2 years. So I took that and I kind of ran with it. And I was like, if other people are struggling the same way, and I mean, a lot of creatives don't really want to spend a lot of time with the back end, the work of it all, the trial and error. They just want to decorate a pretty cookie. And all these cookies aren't tasting so great. I was like, this is a gap in the industry that I could fill, because I feel like I've put so much time and effort into my own that like I could step up and help other people, so if they don't have to, go through the process of all the research and all the yeah.
That's awesome. I like that a lot. And it sounds like that's turned into a business venture as well, which is really cool.
Right. It is a labor of love. I will say that much, because there is a lot that goes into it, buying new machinery. Like, it has been quite the lengthy process. But now I have the finished product, and it really is so fun, because it started out just to be a flavoring, right? Like, I was like, oh, this is great. And then I was working with a food scientist, and we developed a way that, I won't say all the nerdy, like geeky part of it, but the oil and water and emulsification process, all those type things, you can get a way where the oil actually encapsulates some of your flavors, and so it protects them in the baking process. So like, let's just say you put vanilla into your recipe. It bakes out way before 350 degrees, like 250 or something like that. But by emulsification, and we use this machine that it actually shears it at a very high speed. The oil encapsulates the flavor particles, and so you can bake it up to 450 degrees without that flavor like baking out. which I don't think you're baking cakes or cookies at 450 degrees, right? Like, so it
Mm-mm.
really went from a flavor to a flavor enhancer, because the scientists, I mean, I'll give all the credit to like my scientist, food scientist, who says they have a food scientist. I do, I guess. I give
So
all
cool.
of the credit for him, because, you know, through trial and error, I was really big on the flavor part of it. And he was like, Mitzi, look how cool we could do this. And it turned out to be awesome.
Oh, that's so awesome. I love that. That's super, super fun.
Yeah.
So my next question here is like sharing some of your proudest moments as a baker. And maybe you touched on this a second ago, but what sets your baked goods apart from others? You kind of touched on that a second ago, but maybe also some proud moments as a baker that you can look back and say, like, I'm really proud that I did that.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I do want that flavor for sure is my number one thing that sets me apart, I think. But I like to focus on the service part of baking homemade goods for people, because I don't think there's enough of it in this world. I don't think there's enough of like, hey, I did something from hand. I'm thinking about you. Here's this really cool gift that, you know, either I made, or even if, you know, you buy it from somebody else, but it's homemade, like that's special. And we kind of look over that. So like I can think of one set that a set of cookies that I did kind of recently, that she had miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage, and she finally was pregnant. And it was just cookies for her baby shower. And I kind of, you know, discounted it as just baby shower cookies. But when I gave them to her, she was so emotional, because she's like, I have tried so many years for this baby, and I never dreamed that this baby shower really was going to happen. Like all of my, you know, thoughts and like all of my hopes and dreams like are coming true finally. And so at that moment, I thought, it's more than just baking something for someone, right? It means more. It's a gesture of love and memories and events and hopefulness. And I just think, you know, there's not a lot of that in this world. And so to bring that back into baking, I think is really important, and something that we do in the Cook Years that I kind of can say that I'm proud of, because I love that we do this, is every month we keep a running total of how many cookies we give, even if it's just to a teacher or a neighbor or whatever. And so we are at like 35,700 or something like that of just people in the Cook Years who have just donated cookies to someone, or they had extra and gave them away. And so I really think that, you know, something that I hope to always hang on to, and to keep that as a special thing with, you know, homemade goods.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. I love that as well. My grandmother was a baker for, I think, probably 35, 40 years. She worked and also in baking, and then also baked from home. But that was something that I really took from her as well, is just that act of love. There's so much love that is put into some of those baked goods, and I love that. And there's so much nostalgia around it as well. I just love it. So good.
There's love and a few swear words and more love.
So true. So true. So much goes into making cookies, that's for sure. And to those listeners, those who are listening, go check out Mitzi's cookies, go check out her Instagram and stuff, because she does amazing work. This is an area that I don't get into at all. Like, I'm all about the cake art and the other, like the baking aspect, but when it gets into like the intricate cookie decorating, like I just don't do it. I'm not there. So good work.
Well, thank you for saying that.
So you've done so this next question is how do you stay current with new trends and techniques in the baking industry? And the reason I asked that, and also too, like you're doing something for other people in the industry to help them stay up on their trends and techniques, but how do you stay up on your trends and techniques in order to help them?
Yeah, I love this question, because I just recently went on a girls trip. And at our resort, things were far enough away, we had to hop on a golf cart, and they had to shuttle us to dinner and back and all the things. So I'm sitting on this golf cart with some of my girlfriends, and I'm like, oh my gosh, someone hand me their camera. I don't know where mine was. I'm like, hand me your phone. And I took a picture of my skirt with like the greenery next to the golf cart by me, next to bamboo. And everyone was like, Mitzi, you are so weird. I'm like, yep, I embrace that. But I saw the color palette. I saw kind of, you know, the design, and it worked, and the texture. And so sometimes I think if I have a deadline, if I have something that I have to get out there, to remove myself completely from Instagram, from the cookie world, the things that you see over and over again, and kind of just put yourself in real life and pay attention a little bit more to just your surroundings. That's probably where I think I can find the most original and unique ideas.
I really like that a lot, because especially in today's day and age, when you have so many pictures of cookies and Pinterest and Instagram, and there's so many things that just get recycled and redone often. And so being able to see new techniques and new design aspects is really cool. I like that, finding inspiration from nature or just your surroundings, right?
Right. I am not the baker that if you say, here's a picture of exactly what I want, I don't ever want to do that. I'll say, I'll take that into consideration, but I would love to do my own like creative control on this, and I'll put my own spin on it, because it's not fun just to copy someone, right?
It's very, very true. Very, very, very true. What advice would you give aspiring bakers who want to take their skills to the next level? Like, other than joining your groups, obviously, that's where cookie people should go join. But other than that, like, what would you suggest to people?
Yeah. I honestly would say find a mentor. When I first started, I reached out to a few people, and there was one of those people who actually like answered my question. I'm sure it was a very basic question to them. They were so kind, and now we're really good friends. But if you can just reach out and find the people who are helpful and are willing to be helpful, just kind of, put yourself out there a little bit, make friends with people, comment on their Instagram, and then ask them a question. If you have mentorship in the business part of it, the decorating part of it, whatever it is, it's going to save you a ton of time in the long run, and it'll probably save you a lot of money, like wasting type products and all the things. So if I were to go back, I would probably get more help at the beginning, as opposed to just trial and error or thinking I know, or YouTube.
So really it comes down to being willing to invest in yourself and your own growth, whether that's personal growth or whether that's learning different techniques and those kind of things. I think that's also something that I can echo with big time, because when I first started my bakery, I went into it and I didn't want anybody's help because I wanted to figure it out myself. But now looking back, I'm like, it would have saved me probably 6 years of work and failures had I reached out and got a mentor.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yep. Amen to that. Right. Yep.
So much. But sometimes we're just a little bit stubborn and we don't want help. And I think most people are probably in that camp, but it doesn't hurt to ask. And that's something that I absolutely love, is when I get a random message from a baker just asking me a question. And I'm like, so happy to answer, like, because they took the time to ask, because just that takes a lot of courage right there.
Right. And you might find a few people who aren't so nice, but there are Pete's in this world, and keep reaching out, and you'll find people who will really embrace you.
Yes. Yeah. And some people might not want to talk to you, and that's fine.
Yeah. Right.
What do you enjoy most about being a professional baker, cookie artist, however you categorize yourself? And what keeps you motivated to continue to innovate and to continue to create?
Yeah. I think mine goes back to teaching. I was a high school teacher for a few years before I had babies. And so I really love teaching to begin with. Side note, I taught English, but I also taught sex ed to 16-year-olds. So like, there's nothing in this world I can't do after teaching sex ed to 16-year-olds. I'm fine. I'm good with it. But I think teaching really just becomes a thing that, when you want to help other people, it kind of gets like stuck in your blood. And it's something that I think I keep going back to that in my life. If I am feeling down or depressed or all the things, I'll go back to like, am I focused on myself or helping other people? I'm focused on myself. So then it's easy to get down on yourself. But if I can take myself away from that a little bit more, and I can, focus on other people, teaching them, helping them, whatever it is, I think that's maybe like a very big pivoting point in my life where I actually find my own happiness that way. Pete, I forgot the first part of your question.
Oh, you're fine. No worries.
Right over it.
Yeah. What do you enjoy most about running your own business?
Yeah. I honestly, I am not a clock in, clock out kind of girl. I couldn't do the hours. I want to be there for my family. And so I would just say the freedom that comes with my own business. I get to say how much money I make. I mean, someone asked me to do something, bake something for them. I get to choose what my time is worth. It's honestly, I need to have my own freedom in my life, and I need to be able to say yes, and I need to be able to say no to kind of whatever I want to, so that I can stay, on my own terms. So that's probably my very favorite part of owning my business.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So before we go into, so at the end of my podcast, I usually kind of rifle through like a bunch of kind of short little questions, just because some of them are kind of fun. But before we get to that, what can you give us a sneak peek into what exciting projects are coming up for you right now? Where can people find you? Where can they, like, what events do you have coming up? Because I want to make sure that any of our listeners that are out there that are in your realm and want to be more involved in your world and the cookies and the Cookie Summit, all the things, what do you have going on? How can people find you?
Yeah, awesome. So I did social media growth for a few years on Instagram mainly. And so my own personal handle is Happy Confetti. And so you can find me there. That's kind of just my random doings. If it were me and I wanted to get a taste of the life of Mitzi and all things that I do, come to the World Cookie Summit this 21st. It starts the 21st of March. If you just go to worldcookiesummit.com, you can register for that and it's free. And then if it's something that you like and you kind of find your people there, the cookie years is always kind of the next step, but kind of test the waters there at the World Cookie Summit. And then the happy flavor is the newest, like, greatest thing. So I'm gonna obviously sell it online. The Instagram for that is just the _happy_flavor_ because Instagram works that way, and there's all the other handles that people have. But I will be going to SoFlo and selling there as a vendor. I'll be going to both Cookie Cons, Pinners Conference. So it'll be fun. This will be kind of, I feel like it's like a book tour. Like, I'm going around the world with my happy flavor and I'm going to give it to all the people and see how they like it. But so that's just a brand new, I'm actually like officially launching it during the World Cookie Summit. And so, you can kind of follow along with that too, but that'll be fun.
Oh, that's so fun. Well, I'm really excited to watch your journey because, you've mentioned that you've only been doing this for about 4 years. And it's incredible, all the projects and the things that you're building out. It's going to be very interesting to watch your journey. So make sure you go and follow her on her accounts because she'll have some very exciting things going on. So make sure you go over and follow her. Okay, we're going to do some of these are quicker questions than others, but what is the best concert that you've ever attended?
No joke. New Kids on the Block. When I was 10, nothing will ever live up to New Kids on the Block. Ever. Never.
That is amazing. And was that here in Utah? Was that in a different state?
It was in Utah. And my aunt took me, and I think on the way there, my sister threw her retainer away in the Burger King dumpster. Most memorable moment of my life. Finally, we made it to New Kids on the Block, and like afterwards, I bought the bedspread, the board game, all the things. It's the best.
Oh, I love it. That's so good. Okay, what is the most memorable dessert that you've ever had?
Memorable in a not so good way might be my Christmas cookie challenge cookies, but memorable in a good way. I honestly love making things for my boys. I made them a hamburger cake for their birthday this last year. Like, they are so appreciative, and I think they see the time and effort that goes behind these things. And so I love making anything for kind of my family, especially my boys. That's why I do it.
Awesome. And okay, this next one, interesting one. Some people have stories here, some people don't. Some people don't want to share them, but do you have any cake or dessert fail stories that you would like to share?
Okay, well, I feel like my whole first couple years were a bunch, just this run of fails. So yes, definitely I have fail stories. But I think if I'm not pushing myself enough, then I'm not getting better. And so I feel like I fail often. But I took a modeling chocolate class just this last year. And it was hard for me. I had never worked with modeling chocolate before. It was so hard. And so I feel like I left that class. I mean, it was an 8-hour class, but it was very discouraging because I thought I could just pick up on it and things would be great. But I've taken that and I thought I'm not much of a chocolate modeler. And so I've just taken what I learned and I've applied it a little bit to cookies as opposed to doing a whole like face figure bust type thing. And so once I kind of could take those little elements and bring it into my world, I did so much better. And it really has like been another tool kind of in my tool belt that I could use. But yes, I feel like anytime I try something new, I have huge failures, and it's okay because you kind of have to just take those failures and like find your jive from what you're doing, right?
Yeah. Well, and one thing I want to, maybe a follow-up question to that too, is something I talk a lot about in my coaching with clients and things, is how to use failure for your strength. And I think that's exactly what you just hit on, right? And maybe you can touch on that a sec, is like, how has trying hard things and new things and learning from those failures helped propel you forward?
Right. I think after you get done with a failure, I'm going back to the Christmas cookie challenge on this. You have this fork in the road and you really can decide what you want to do as the next step. So investing in a project, that's when I started my flavor development with a food scientist. And that's kind of what propelled me into, doing the happy flavor is I had two directions that I could go. And I definitely didn't want to, sit stagnant or quit because I literally find so much joy in what I do. I don't want to be that person who has to clock in. So, you have a fork in the road and you just physically have to put one step in front of the other, even if it's not comfortable or fun for a minute, or, you just have to kind of reassess what direction you want to go in. And you just have to use that as like a propelling thing as opposed to something that slows you down.
Totally. I couldn't have said that better myself. I think those are the most valuable things, is trying something that you're maybe a little bit uncomfortable doing, but you know that it's going to help get you to that next step. And I think that's such valuable learnings there. Is there a common myth about cake or cookie, and maybe not necessarily the business, but maybe just in general, or a common misunderstanding that you want to clarify?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people think that the cookies are hard. Maybe when I started, I also had that same belief, but you just have to have the right direction and the right start, and then they're not. Literally, if you can just get your icing consistency down, cookies are a breeze and the sky's the limit. But people just start maybe without the right direction or the right recipe or all the things, and it really can be a struggle. But I hear all the time that, one, it's too hard, which is totally absolutely not. And two, people are like, I could never make money doing this. And I mean, I can attest that it's a real thing. You can make really good money baking, teaching in-person classes. Like there are tons of people that, I mean, even some people in the cookie years that I can think of right now that have stories of quitting their job, and they had a really good job before and they're making so much more now doing what they love. But it can be a successful thing, and it really doesn't have to be that hard. It doesn't.
I love that, because I think a lot of people will just discount it and be like, oh, it's just too hard.
Yeah.
And then just never do anything. It's
Yep.
like, okay, what 3 books, well, it doesn't have to be 3, but what books or podcasts have you listened to lately that you would recommend to listeners? And it doesn't necessarily have to be baking related either.
Okay. This is actually right now on my Audible is The Gifts of Imperfection. And I cannot get through the book because it's Brene Brown, but I stop it and write things down. And I cannot even, I'm like 3/4 of the way through it. And I probably have more notes than like the book is even thick. But because I tend to be a little bit of a perfectionist in the things that I do. And so this one has been like mind shattering, like, where was this 10 years ago type of book for me. So definitely The Gifts of Imperfection. And then business wise, I'm a huge fan of James Wedmore. So every time a James Wedmore podcast will pop up, I like him because he's a little bit kooky in the way of like, he calls himself woo woo, which is kind of funny, but he's so real, and he's not going to tell you, just set goals and you can achieve them. They're very practical tips that are, about business and marketing. And so I do a lot of James Wedmore. And then weird enough, I am a TED Talk listener. If I have nothing playing or going on, or I'm just in the car, even if my kids are in there, I'll just pull up a random TED Talk and find one I haven't listened to. And sometimes they're great and sometimes they're not so much, but I love just hearing other people's stories. It's just kind of, my number one answer on that is really just Pete's podcast. The Motivator is my favorite thing ever. That was number one, and then the rest of them are, the following that.
Oh, well, thank you. That's awesome.
I really
like that.
I have binged though. I mean, I just found one, and then, next thing I know, I'm, starting back at the beginning. So anyway,
Oh, well, I really appreciate that. My podcast is very much of a passion project for me, and I've wanted to start it for so long, and I finally did. And I'm coming up almost on my year anniversary of starting. I started May of 2022, so it's pretty exciting. I'm pretty stoked about it.
We are so glad that you did.
Well, thank you. Okay. I think we've got about 2 questions left here. So what would you say is the most important lesson that you have learned on your journey?
This is a hard one. This is hard. And maybe it's because I'm reading this book right now. But I think the hardest thing for me has been, things are not ever going to be what you expect in any sense of, even if it is kind of what you expect, the outcome's different. The way people perceive it is different. Things are not, reality is how it is. There's nothing you can control about it. I've done a lot of like mind shifts lately to try to control how I react, or if I choose to react on certain things, but not to have expectations on how reality really is. Just a short example for this is, in my life, I'm super close to my dad. I have a dad and a sister who I'm super close with, but since probably 15, my mom moved out, and I've never really had a relationship with her. And so for me, that was kind of I never expected that. You expect your mom to go wedding dress shopping with you and like all the things. And so that was maybe my first taste of reality sometimes isn't what you think it will be. And when you have expectations, it's really easy to be, disappointed and let down and all the things. And so maybe the biggest thing that I have maybe conquered, I don't know if conquered's the right word, but kind of overcame, is that reality is just kind of what reality is. And it's up to me to decide what I want to do with that. And my choice a lot lately, which hadn't been in the past, is I don't choose to be disappointed, which kind of sometimes means I don't choose to have expectations for things, which is okay. Like it's been really good for me to, in business, in life, family, all the things, to kind of realize that it is what it is, and I get to choose how I react to that.
And that's such an empowering place to come from, right? Because you can choose how you see the circumstances in your life, and you can choose exactly how that's going to be for you. And I love that so much. And you've probably noticed in my podcast, I bring in a lot of life coaching principles, because I got certified as a life coach last year. And a lot of it is focused on that of your thoughts, and you get to create the results in your life, and you get to look at the circumstances in your life, and you can choose whether you're going to be upset about them or whether you're going to look at them differently, and you can choose what those expectations are. And that's a very empowering place to be, but it's also a lot of responsibility as well, but it's a great place to be able to work towards, for sure.
And it's not easy. It's definitely you have to make a choice to think that way. For me personally, it does not come naturally. I have to erase my initial thought, think about it, actually pause in the moment. It does not come natural to me. So yeah, it's hard. But it's so worth it, just trying to be more aware, even of my thoughts, has kind of changed how I think and how I act.
Yeah, the awareness is probably the biggest thing there. And also the thing I remind myself of all the time is nobody's good at it. I don't think anybody is. I think we get better at it as becoming more aware, but I don't think anybody ever masters it. It just because we just naturally react to things. And I think it all comes down to recovery time from things. It's like when something happens, like you have your initial reaction, maybe it's negative, maybe it whatever it is, but how long do you allow the negativity to affect you, right? It's the recovery time. It's like, do you allow it to affect you for 2 years, or do you allow it to affect you for a couple days?
Ah, that is such a good thought. And I haven't went there, but I love that. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
it's
reflect
it's
on
interesting.
that.
Yeah. Well, because it's just noticing, it's noticing the patterns that you fall into and then being able to be aware of them so that then you can then kind of switch them up. It's kind of an interesting little thing, but it's not an easy thing to do at all.
That's a good thought. Yeah, that's
Okay. So one of the last questions is, what occupation other than your own would you like to try?
this is okay. This is hard. This is hard because I feel like my life is, I don't want to call it a hot mess sometimes, but it's a little bit of it's chaos, I'm mom carpool, I'm all the things. And so my brain goes to something calm, like a librarian where it's super quiet and chill, and your job, you know what your expectations are. But then in reality, when I say that out loud, I wouldn't be fulfilled, and I'm way too loud for the library. People would shush me. But I honestly think if there was something that, I mean, I don't do yoga. I'm not going to lie. I'm not a big exerciser, but like something that got you in this mindset. You could be a yoga teacher where you just get to relax and be calm in your life. I feel like in my second life, that'll be me.
Okay, I like that. I
Not
like
me
that a
yet,
lot.
but I could do it in my next life. I could do it.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, so before we end up, is there any other thoughts or any other things that you would like to touch on before we end off? Maybe it's something to cap things off, or just a last minute reminder on things you have coming up.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like maybe this is just because I reiterate this so much in maybe the cook years, and we talk about this a lot, is no matter where you are on your journey with baking or whatever, your business or all the things, you're doing better than you think you are. Like, you're awesome. We discount ourselves so easily. We get burnout, we get like all of the things, and we get discouraged, but you're doing amazing. If you take yourself outside of, the cake Instagram, the cookie Instagram, all the things, and you don't compare yourself to other people. I mean, my neighbor down the street who's getting cookies from me, she's not following all these amazing cookie artists. She's following me. I'm her amazing, as good or as crappy or whatever that might be. So maybe just don't discount yourself, keep going, and just find something that you like and you're passionate about. And really, honestly, all the other things, they'll come to you. Doors will open, things will work out, but just, don't give up and give yourself more credit than you are.
So good. So good. Well, a big, huge thank you to Mitzi for joining us. And as a reminder, go check her out on her accounts. I'll make sure that I put links in the show notes so that people can know where to find you as well. And then also with the World Cookie Summit coming up, I'm going to be speaking at that, and she's got great things planned there. So go check that out. And just a huge thank you for joining us again on the Mighty Baker Business Circle podcast. As always, have a mighty day, and we'll catch you on next week's episode. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks for tuning in to the Mighty Baker Business Circle podcast. Join the Mighty Baker Business Circle Facebook group to connect with other bakery and small food business entrepreneurs and access exclusive resources and support. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform to help us improve and reach more listeners. Don't hesitate to reach out to us on social media or through our website if you have any questions or feedback. Keep baking, stay inspired, and see you on the next episode.